This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 61 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. It's all about travel and gratitude. Now, in terms of anything related to gratitude and travel, I think I could talk for hours on this topic all by myself. But you probably wouldn't want to hear me rambling on. But I am grateful from two perspectives. I'm grateful for everything that travel has brought into my life. It's completely changed my life, and I can't begin to imagine how different my life would be if I hadn't developed a love of travel, and thanks to my parents for that. Grateful to them to adopt the theme of the episode. Everything about my life would be different. I wouldn't even have the son I have because I wouldn't have met his father when I was traveling and living in Germany. Everything would be utterly, utterly different. So for that, I am extraordinarily grateful. And I'm also constantly reminded of, by traveling, of how much gratitude I should have for my circumstances in life, for the luck of being born here in Australia, of being able to travel relatively easily, of seeing how other people live a much tougher life than I do, and for reminding me of the gratitude I have for that. So I could go on and on for hours, but fortunately instead I have found three guests who also have some really interesting tales to tell about travel and gratitude from all kinds of angles. And the first of my guests today is Alicia Nelson from the Prairie Style File, and she is grateful for a particular lesson that she learnt from traveling.
My travel and gratitude happens a lot closer to home. I started travel blogging sort of by accident. I'd taken trips to Japan, all over Europe, and sort of was a travel writer before I really knew that travel writing and travel blogging was a thing. Mm-hmm. And I was working a really stressful job. I was in advertising for a long time. I worked at a series of very successful radio stations here in Fargo, North Dakota, where I live. And it was one of those jobs where you end up working 50 hours a week, and then it becomes 60 hours a week, and then you get a fairly good vacation package. But on this particular trip, I remember that we left on a Thursday, I believe, or Wednesday or a Thursday, and I'd already put in like a full 40 hours before we left.
Ooh, wow.
And my boss was like, well, you can't go to Paris without being in contact with me, and you have to check in every morning at the hotel. And I was just like, okay, I really am tiring of living this way. And that trip, I just felt like I was clawing my way toward that trip. And I was like, I just have to get on the plane. And I emailed her before I left. I'm like, I'm not going to be in contact. Here's the name of the hotel that I'm staying. You can leave me a message if you need, but my assistants are handling things. They're more than capable. It's only, I think it was a week and a half, so it wasn't a terribly long time. And I felt like I got on the plane, and like so many people, I was exhausted before I even fastened my seatbelt. And I thought, okay, I've made it to this trip. I just have to find a way to like de-stress and put all this out of my mind. I love travel more than anything, but it got to the point where it was so hard to even go that I understand why so many Americans especially don't use their vacation. It just became another job to get my regular job done so I could leave and enjoy this perk that was supposedly mine to enjoy. So we landed in Paris, and we really just, we had no plans. We booked a room in the fourth, and I was like, I just want to like be in the city. I think my husband had never been, and I had been there before. So I think he wanted to check out the Mona Lisa. And I wanted to eat a lot of bread because I'm a big...
Oh, yeah, French bread. So good.
I could eat, and we did. We ate French bread like constantly, every meal, obsessively, and brought baguettes and brought them back to our hotel. And we really just built this whole trip around what we wanted to do, which was like carbs and wine and beer and
That sounds
sidewalk
fabulous.
and wandering. And I just felt like this is exactly what I want to be doing. And I just felt like, when you travel and you feel like you're more engaged and you're noticing the world around you and you're more relaxed and open. I just thought, how do I channel this and get this back home? Like, this is so the opposite of my mood and my life and my day back home. And I was not content to leave it. And we were sitting and we were watching these little boys play with a motorized boat in the fountain. And we were just sitting and we bought a drink and we had some macaroons. And I was just sitting there and I was like, I have sat here in complete and utter contentment. So just grateful to be here watching this, which is really nothing out of the ordinary. It was just this ordinary weekday Parisian scene. The kids were out of school. And I just felt like I need to find a way to bottle this and take it home. And I'd said that after every trip. And I'd been lucky enough to travel quite a lot from the time that I was 17 on. But I just thought this needs to be something that I take with me. And I was watching these kids and I was watching the ducks. And I thought, oh, if only I could just have this experience closer to home. If only I could have this in Fargo. If only there were a duck pond in Fargo. If only I could just put this in my suitcase and take it home. And it was the day after we landed, we went back to our apartment and I thought, I'm going to wander like I wandered in Paris. It's
Nice.
not nearly as beautiful. Paris, I think, is really one of the best walking cities ever.
True.
But I took a different turn and I went west instead of east and stumbled upon a duck pond.
No way.
And I just thought, Alicia, this whole like how funny that like the thing that I literally wanted and craved in this particular moment that resonated with me in Paris, across the world, I now have here, and just made me laugh. And I thought, like, wow, what else have I missed? Like, I live right here. What else haven't I seen? And I just really tried to explore my own neighborhood. And I was lucky enough to travel for my job. And that took me across the state of North Dakota quite a lot. And even I was guilty. I'm a Minnesota native originally, and I'm familiar with North Dakota, but I thought, oh, there's not a lot between point A and point B. It's mostly rural. There's not much to see. And I found these amazing shops, and I found really great restaurants, and just all these little treasures that I had no idea existed.
Oh,
and I realized a
fabulous.
lot of people didn't know about them either. So that one experience in Paris really prompted me to do what I do and to become a writer and to really dive into it. But it also really prompted me to look into landscapes and places that I thought I knew and to find those surprises there, because they are everywhere. And the most common comment that I get from my readers now is, wow, I have lived here for X amount of years. I had no idea that existed. And that is great to me. Like, I feel like that's wonderful. Like, not everybody can travel as much as they like. Sometimes there's money, sometimes there's other issues involved. I get it. But everybody can have that kind of experience, like, of discovering something or having a moment of, like, peace or quiet or, like, excitement at discovering something new. You can find that even in your own neighborhood.
Alicia's story has reminded me of feeling grateful for the things I can experience in my own backyard as well. And I learnt that lesson through travelling eventually as well. I mean, I'm guilty of sometimes thinking my hometown of Perth in Western Australia is boring and there's nothing to do. And it has had a reputation over the years of being not the most fascinating place. But it's got so much better. Plus, if you just look hard enough, there's those metaphorical duck ponds, like Alicia found, everywhere. And I am more and more grateful for that. Today, for example, it's the school holidays as I record this, and my son and I headed into downtown Perth, the CBD, to see a Lego exhibition, I have to say, on something that was exciting for both of us because it was featuring Lego models of landmarks around the world, like the Taj Mahal, his favourite, and my favourite, St Basil's Cathedral, and a number of others. So we had a great day out there, but we had to park a long way from where the exhibition was. And we got to walk all the way through the front of the city along the foreshore and back again. And it reminded me yet again that Perth has really changed, and there's always new things to explore. And I think that without having travelled enough to realise that, I think I probably would just still be lazily sitting in my car and driving to exactly where the exhibition was and not experiencing more of Perth and not trying to get out there more. So, yeah, there are duck ponds everywhere. Now, my next guest today is Cassandra Lay, and she's on for the first time today. We had a really fabulous chat recently, and she is particularly grateful for the opportunities she's had to travel.
After graduating from college, I moved abroad to Spain for 2 years.
Oh, wow, great.
And yeah, it was kind of crazy because I didn't really speak Spanish, well, from 4 years of high school. And I didn't really know anything about Spain. And when I told my family that I was doing it, they were like, "Where are you going?"
You're crazy.
I know, that's basically what they told me. They said, "Are you crazy?" And then they thought about it for a while, and then some of them were like, "Oh, this is a great idea. I wish I could do that."
Ah.
So, yeah, I think it's because my family is originally from Vietnam,
Mm-hmm.
and they all immigrated and were refugees after the Vietnam War and came to the United States.
Right.
But I was born here, and I think for them, traveling is more of a luxury because they had to start from the bottom, and they all work extremely hard, and some of them have their own business, and then some of them work within corporate America. So travel has always been like that golden ticket. Uh, so when I said I was going to move abroad after they had come here, they were like, "Wow, I wish I could do something like that." Some of them were like, "Are you scared?" And then others were saying, "Take the opportunity because we never had the opportunity to do something like this. We had to go straight into work." So I think just the gratitude I felt after I moved abroad
I
and
bet.
just the feeling of having all this privilege to be able to do that and that my family worked so hard was something that I like didn't recognize at first. And then afterwards I was like, wow, you're right. I'm pretty privileged and I'm pretty
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
But that's wonderful to recognise it. I mean, I think a lot of people don't recognise that. But I guess in contrast to your like your parents and grandparents' background, then it's a stark
Hmm.
contrast then. So it's more clear to recognise that and be grateful
Exactly.
for it. Yeah.
I think that's another thing that I realize is being born here in the United States, everyone thinks it's, the American dream is definitely like a huge thing.
Mm-hmm.
At least here. I don't know if everyone else knows about the American dream.
Yeah. Yep.
Maybe.
Yep. No, we do.
Okay.
Yep.
And everyone has this idea that it's this wonderful thing, and then the movies portray it as, you know, success, riches, opportunities. But I think, I don't know, growing up here, it's been very different. We get into this idea of, having all that success. And I just watched the movie Minimalism on Netflix.
Oh.
So
Yep.
now my brain is like, whoa. But
Mm-hmm.
uh, having all those things doesn't really necessarily mean success. And I also, now I'm kind of going off track, but
Mm-hmm. It's good
I
though.
wanted to talk about, I also wanted to say how the United States passport is such a strong passport too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think most of American, or at least, United States Americans
Mm-hmm.
don't utilize it.
Yes, true. Yes. You can go basically anywhere in the world and a lot of them don't.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
just hearing about when I lived abroad, I met other people who didn't have such a strong passport and
Mm-hmm.
had to go through, all these hoops and red tape and paid a lot of money just to get visas just to travel because
Yeah.
I need to travel and I didn't want to stay in my country. So I wanted to get out there and see the world, but I had to go through all these things and I'm like, oh, I just kind of
Bought a
used my,
ticket.
yeah, I just bought a ticket. And then
Yeah.
maybe for certain countries I would need to get a visa, but a lot of the countries are very open and receptive to
Mm.
United States citizens.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
just
It
seeing
would really
that,
be difficult to get a visa to those that need it. Yeah.
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 So seeing all that, I was like, wow, I am
Mm.
very lucky.
Yeah. I mean, Australians have the same perspective, really. We actually have the Australian dream, which is kind of just our version of the American dream. And although we tend to travel more, we don't. I'm sure it took me a long time to realise how lucky I was to have an Australian passport and how easy it was to go to pretty much anywhere in the world. And
Yeah.
and then, only over time got to know people from other countries where, they have to go through these awful visa interviews and pay money, and they still
Yep.
might not get a visa. And, it's like
Yeah.
horrifying to think that, because that just doesn't happen for us. If we want to go somewhere, we basically just go.
Exactly. And then I think another thing that really caught my attention was um, being an expat and the fact that I had that privilege and that choice to
Mm.
move out and leave the United States for a period of time to just, teach English and kind of find myself, quote unquote, and travel. Whereas other people need to leave their country for other circumstances, just like my parents and my
Yeah.
grandparents, like they needed to leave Vietnam. They didn't have the choice. So it was very different.
It really was a long time before I realised that having an Australian passport, just the luck of having been born with an Australian passport, was actually something quite powerful when it came to travelling. I really distinctly remember reading a blog post from an Egyptian blogger a few years ago, where he explained in great detail just how difficult it was for him. Even though he was a professional in Egypt, he was a pharmacist with a business, I think, of his own, or worked with his parents' business. In either case, he had a lot of strong ties to Egypt. He was planning on going back there. He was just wanting to travel to a few more places. But the process of trying to apply for visas, which he required to go pretty much anywhere that he wanted to go, was expensive and taxing and stressful and just horrid. And I'm just so grateful that I have an Australian passport, because it seems so unfair that other people have so many difficulties in just trying to get to a new country. So, it was interesting to be reminded of that by my chat with Cassandra. Now, my final guest today is Abby Lewtas, who we've heard from before recently, and she started chatting to me about gratitude she learnt from a trip to Guatemala, among others.
I really think that gratitude is just something that I have really leaned into with travel. When I was in Guatemala, I did a homeschool and learnt Spanish, and I got to stay with a family in Guatemala, and it was just their lifestyle was so simple. We just lived in this simple concrete home, and their laundry was outside, and their bathroom was outside, and it was just such a simple home, and it was a simple lifestyle, and it just made you really, I think, reflect and really feel grateful for what we have back here in Australia and in the first world, I suppose, to actually see how simply they live, and how happy they were as well. So it just makes you feel so grateful for what we have, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yes, I know that, lots of research shows that you don't need lots of stuff to be happy. But when you live in a society like Australia, where most people do have lots of stuff, it's really hard to lose. It's really easy to lose sight of that.
And I think, what was really highlighted to me, and I've had this on another experience, I think this other time was when I was in Costa Rica, was just that the people are so happy with the simple life. They are so happy just to have the job working in the restaurant and come home and spend the time with their family and friends. And these people don't have the busy, hectic lives that we do, but they do have the beautiful surrounds and the tropical location and so on. But they were just so grateful for the simple things in life, and it makes you really think. When we have these first world problems and we have meltdowns, that there's people in the world that just don't have any of this at all. And so I think, it really helps you hone into gratitude.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, I mean, I remember when we were kids, you'd always hear you have to eat your dinner because there's starving kids in the world and all of that stuff. But it doesn't really mean anything unless you experience it and meet these people. And that's what makes a difference, not just being told.
Absolutely. And I think when you actually go and have the connections and meet these people and you hear their stories and just see the way they live, it's just, we only maybe go there and experience that for, in my case, when I lived with the family in Guatemala, it was only for a week, or we might only go for a certain period of our life. And we can come back to this amazing country that we have, but for them, that's their life. It's forever. So, it's and they are so grateful. They are so grateful for what they have, and it's so simple. So, it makes you check in with yourself, I think.
I think Abby summed up this whole travel and gratitude situation pretty well, because I think that's the biggest kind of gratitude that we, particularly as Western travellers, come across as we travel. The gratitude that, we come from a relatively wealthy country. Not that wealth is everything, but we do have relatively few concerns about, being able to find good shelter, enough food, and all of those basic necessities of life. And plus, of course, we get to travel and experience these different worlds and meet the different people who probably never get to leave their home country, maybe not even sort of the area around where they live. And as she said, it really does make you check in with yourself and think about your first world problems and perhaps dismiss some of them as not really worth thinking about. So as I said, I have so many reasons for gratitude connected to travel, and my guests have reminded me of just a few of them. I'm sure it's a topic we'll be talking about again in the future. If you have a reason that travel has made you feel particularly grateful, come over and share it with us on the Facebook group. Just search for Thoughtful Travellers in Facebook or click through from the show notes. Speaking of the show notes, they will be at notaballerina.com/61, because this is episode 61. That's getting up there, isn't it? How does this keep happening every week? So anyway, thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm grateful as well to have you guys as listeners, so thank you. And I'll also be grateful if you go and check out some of our guests and their exciting websites and so on, because I'm very grateful for them for appearing. That's probably enough of my gratitude, right? So first up, we had Alicia Nelson from The Prairie Style File. You can find her at theprairiestylefile.com. She is a North Dakota expert, among other talents, and she now has a book out called North Dakota Beer, A Heady History. I have to confess, I have never been to North Dakota, but, in the way that things keep popping up once you hear of them or think about them too much, North Dakota keeps popping into my life since I chatted with Alicia in the last few weeks. So, it's weird. My mum and I were discussing North Dakota at lunch today, so there you go. Maybe I'll have to put it higher up my need to travel to soon list. After Alicia, I chatted for the first time with Cassandra, and she has a great blog at thequirkypineapple.com, and on Instagram she's TQPineapple for the quirky. She has lots of really lovely posts in there, so do have a look. And finally, I spoke with Abby Lewtas, and you can find Abby at abbylewtas.com. And just a final reminder that she has been running a survey about reverse culture shock called Life After Travel. So if you've been away for a while and come home relatively recently, if you head to abbylewtas.com/survey, you can help her out by providing some information there. Speaking of gratitude, I am grateful for the rain because it's winter in Perth. And I wonder if you can hear the rain gushing down my gutters outside, because I can hear it really loudly through my headphones. So if you're wondering, if you do hear that, that's what it is. It does occasionally rain in Perth. We're having our 1 week of winter. And I'm so sick of it because it's cold and wet. It's no good at all, especially in the school holidays. Anyway, enough of me. I don't sound very grateful at all now, do I? So you can get in touch with me, as well as the Thoughtful Travellers group on Facebook. You can tweet me at Amanda Kendall and use the hashtag ThoughtfulTravelPod. I always love to hear from you and have a chat with my listeners. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.